Hey everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is a BillWhittle.com right angle lightning round.
Killing me you are, Larry.
That's right. It actually says on my script, if I were to have a script, pause for Bill, right there.
Killing me, Larry does.
So for the
Killing me, you are, Larry.
for the uninitiated, this used to be behind the members only paywall, but now our members have insisted that this members sponsored content be presented to the great unwashed. So let me tell you what I do. I spend the 2 weeks when I'm not doing lightning rounds collecting, sampling, curating shorter stories, weird news, just for Bill and just for Scott. And let's find out what I came up with this week. All right, Bill, we're going to start with you this week. NPR reporter Sarah McCammon defends media not standing up for national anthem, thinks to do so would be political. Isn't that the one thing we all used to be able to agree on, was just stand up for the damn anthem?
Yes, that's because we formerly had two pro-American parties that had different ways of looking at what pro-American meant. But that ship has sailed, hopefully to return someday. After circling the globe several times, hopefully it'll come back. But when somebody says something like that, not to stand is also political. So what they're basically saying is, it's not what the actual truth is. It's not that they're not standing because they don't want to make a political message. They're not standing because they don't want to make the "I support America" message. By sitting, they're sending an even stronger political message, and that message is that this country that's given me everything, including the freedom to be a complete jackass, is not worth me rising out of my seat in terms of mutual respect. We don't ask you to stand for President Trump. We don't ask you to stand for Rush Limbaugh. We don't ask you to stand for anything, just for the country that you live in. That's all. You know, your vision of it is as valid as mine is. It's far less accurate, but it is certainly as valid as mine is, and you have a right to do anything you want to here. So if you feel like standing for the national anthem is against your belief system, because that's what it is, then I say please sit down, stay down, and for God's sakes, make sure to televise it as often as possible.
Make it public. You know, Bill, you just made me think of something. I really hate it when that happens. But you look back, we've had some really awful Democratic presidents domestically. I'm talking about Wilson and FDR here, who just had terrible, terrible programs. And Wilson was just every instinct of his was totalitarian. But they turned out to be amazingly good, creative, and effective wartime commanders. But there is not a single Democrat running for president in 2020, and I believe at last count there were 412 Democrats running for president in 2020. Not a single one of them that I would trust with anything more dangerous than a book of wet matches.
And even then, lightning could strike the matches. So you want to just keep that away. Yeah, you're right. There's well, I mean, it just explains itself. There was ISIS when Barack Obama insisted on giving ISIS convoys 45-minute warning that we were about to attack them from the air so that we didn't get any innocent ISIS people killed in this. And then there's Donald Trump, the day after becoming president, drops the largest non-nuclear bomb in the inventory, and ISIS is gone because we decided to fight them.
It's amazing what happens if the commander-in-chief
Amazing
gives a
what
command.
happens when you decide to fight the enemy. Yes, it is astonishing.
And you Democrats, you used to be really good at that. What happened to you guys? All right, Scott, on to you. I love this story. I just love this story. A 97-year-old D-Day veteran just parachuted. Well, this is obviously 6 days old now. Just parachuted into Normandy again. Tom Rice once jumped outside of Carentan under enemy fire in 1945, said of this jump, it went perfect. We're running out of these stories, aren't we?
We're running out of these men.
Exactly.
I saw the picture of that, and it was a tandem jump with another, professional skydiver. I assume a military guy, and it reminded me of when former President George H.W. Bush was still skydiving into his late 80s and maybe even early 90s. I forget when he stopped doing that, but it's. They asked him about it. They asked this veteran of World War II about it, and he said, well, the last time I came here, it was kind of dark, and we weren't quite sure where we were when we landed, and so this this was a different experience for him altogether. I think it was a great reminder of what it took to be able to execute the single greatest military act, I think, in history, the one as far as the import of it and the consequences of it and what it led to and the civilization that it saved. It reminds me also, my grandfather, who's passed away now, went in on D+4 at Utah Beach, and it was still hot at that time. And he said that periodically throughout his life after the war, he would have dreams where he saw his friends who had died in the war. And he said they were all young and they didn't recognize him. They didn't know who he was because he had come home and he had lived. And when you think
him now
of that 97-year-old, coming in and all the men who stepped out of that plane over Normandy as the last act of conscious will in this life, it humbles you and it makes you grateful that such men lived.
And not just what they did at D-Day, not just liberating France from the Nazis, but you know what? They saved Western Europe from being liberated by the Soviet army, which just the Soviet communism was just as brutal as Hitler's Nazism. We can't forget that. Had those men not brought the battle all the way to the middle of Germany in May of 1945, the Cold War would have ended before it started with Soviet troops on the English Channel, and they literally saved the world on June 6th.
And if Eisenhower had let Patton go full speed, Berlin would not have been a divided city. Neither would Prague have fallen to the Soviets or anything else.
Steve, there was one of our members at BillWhittle.com, I believe, either emailed me or posted this to the website. I can't remember which now, but they said there was an elderly gentleman who was coming through customs. He was an American coming through customs going into France, and the French customs official was a little snooty and asked to see his passport. And the old man was kind of fishing around trying to get his passport out, and the passport official said, didn't you know that you would need to show your passport when you got up here to the gate? And haven't you ever been to France before? And he said, oh, yeah, I've been to France before. But the last time I was here, there were no French people around to show my passport to.
Damn. All right, I try and keep these lighthearted, but sometimes some awesomeness creeps in anyway. All right, Bill. Oh, these mistakes always seem to go one way, and I think I just blew the question here. High school apologizes after students' MAGA hats blurred from yearbook. They photoshopped them so that they were just plain red baseball caps. These mistakes, they always seem to go in the same direction, don't they?
Yeah, it's funny how that works. Let's just talk about the larger issue here. Just as one example, there's a popular flight sim out there. I'm pretty sure it's Stormovik, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically, on the tail of all of the German planes, in place of the swastika, are just the four outer bends, so it forms kind of a diamond. You know what I mean? It's like if you take the center of it out and just leave the final thing, so you get four things there, and it's like, well, we don't want to show the swastika on a German plane from 1943, and I imagine that people do this out of a sense of what they perceive to be, respect for. But the part I don't understand is this idea that if we just pretend like it didn't happen, then it didn't happen, is the best way to make sure it happens. It's just the childishness of it, just the sheer 4-year-old kind of childishness of, well, we can't show a swastika on a Nazi plane on a Stuka from 1941. We can't show a swastika on the tail of the airplane. Well, then just ditch the entire simulation, for God's sakes. You're taking Stukas against shipping in the English Channel in 1940, and we've essentially blurred out the swastika because we don't want people to see that you're the bad guys. It's a classic Mitchell and Webb thing with these two SS officers, and the Russians are coming and they're looking at their hats and stuff. We have skulls on our helmets. Maybe we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great bit.
It's a great bit. So again, it's just plain childishness, and it's part of the effort to demonize conservatives. And what's dangerous about it is that it is having that effect. When it is having that effect on people, when you have gotten to the point where you believe that a "Make America Great Again" hat is something that is so offensive that it has to be blurred out of the picture, then you have set up exactly the conditions necessary to blur the people wearing that hat out of history and the picture too. And this seems to be an instinct among people that are drawn to left-wing collectivist philosophies. They tend to be people who will not brook any other opinion, and that includes seeing out of their peripheral vision something that represents another opinion. That must be destroyed. It's a fundamental difference between us guys, honestly, between us and them. It really is. It's like we feel, hey, you have a right to say whatever you want to, bring your best argument, bring it. And they feel like we not only deny that you exist, we're going to make up lies about how evil you are, and we're going to do our very best to stamp out your message. What does that tell you?
Let me come to the possible defense of whoever the game developer is. I've been playing Hearts of Iron, which is a World War II sim, since the first version came out. I don't know, a dozen years, 15 years ago or so. It's on version 4 now. And in the first 3 versions, because of German law that prevents you from having displays of Hitler or Nazi stuff, the German leader was called Mr. Hiller, and they had iron crosses instead of swastikas in order to get the game to comply with German law. And now they just
in that case
have different skins.
In that case, it makes sense on the part of the game developer, but then the blame goes much higher to people should know even better. This idea that by not showing the swastika and not putting you in jail, for showing these kind of things is our way to avoid being Nazis. Is kind of missing the point a little bit, I think,
I thought Steve was going to say that the Hitler estate still owned the copyright and they didn't want to have to pay the royalties.
The Hitler estate. He did design it. He did design it personally. The whole thing. The swastika pre-existed, but the thick black swastika on a white circle on a red flag, Hitler personally designed that.
He
probably does have the copyright.
Bastard. All right, Scott,
Adolf Hitler Incorporated.
We're going to wrap with you on this one. Virginia Democrats accepted donations from Governor Ralph Northam's PAC after calling for his resignation. So I must ask you, my friend, is there anything sweeter than other people's money?
It's not personal. It's just business.
It's just business.
That's the thing in the political world. And the brief time that I spent in it at the shallow end of the pool, it surprised me what people were willing to do for money and how important it was to them. And even the best of public servants among them, the people who were most committed to trying to do the right thing in office, found themselves in this horrible position of having to be in this never-ending cycle of raising money. And you have even in a little local campaign like I had, I don't know how many donors we had, but I'm guessing it was in more than 1,000 contributors. It could have been multiple thousands for all I know. But in any case, even if it was a few hundred, you can't vet your contributors all the time. You can't go through and some of them are obvious and you say, oh, well, that guy from the Hitler fan club wants to give me money. And I'm like, no, thanks. But you don't know what you don't know. I had one of our opponents, I was running together with a team of commissioner candidates, and one of our Republican opponents sent out postcards showing one of my colleagues with a Chinese communist flag on this postcard because she had accepted a contribution from a Democrat, she had given a contribution to a Democrat before she ever got politically active, because the guy worked with her and was her friend and said, hey, I'm running for office. Can you help me out? And
chip it $100, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so she's not only a Democrat, but her company owns a plant in China, and so therefore she's a communist. And and that guy gave money to our group of candidates at one point. So he contributed to me and others. So it's a cesspool, and there's no way to stop it other than for the candidate himself to look somebody in the eye and say, look, I don't know what you think you're getting out of this money, but all you're getting is the privilege of seeing me get elected. You don't get anything else for that. And I might not get elected. So there's no trade in this. And so I really don't care who gives money. I don't think it binds somebody unless their conscience is already bound.
There you go. Yeah, honest politicians stay spot, right? Finally, this is the most audacious headline I've ever seen. I might have altered some of the words a little bit, but just the beginning. Robert Francis Domhall Blathmack Tigernus Beta O'Rourke, also known as... never mind. I altered his name a bit. The rest is straight news. He's at 2% in the polls, but says no early poll of the Texas Senate race said that he was going to win that one either.
Did he win that one?
Well,
that's just great.
You could ask his opponent,
great.
Scott, Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh my God! What that just takes the cake.
Earlier in this segment, when I said I couldn't think of a Democrat that I would trust with anything more dangerous than a box of wet matches, this is exactly the guy I was thinking of. Just too dumb to pour warm piss out of a boot if you put the instructions on the heel. That's the state of this guy and of this race. And Lord help me, but in a couple of weeks here, they start debating. There are so many of them. And I think almost 20 of them have qualified to be on the debate stage. They're going to do 10 a night for 2 nights in a row. And I have to drunk blog this stuff, folks. We need more members in order just to pay for my liquor bill. Look at this. My Grey Goose is down to here. I got to start buying the cheap stuff.
And not only that, Steve has got less than a year to start building up a resistance, ladies and gentlemen. And we need your help now more than ever.
More than ever. I can't drink the cheap stuff. I'll be dead before the summer is out. We've got 2 more of these things coming up. All right.
I think they ought to stage this whole thing, Stephen, like The Voice. I think they ought to first have blind auditions where the moderators face the opposite direction. We don't know who's on stage. And then after those people get through the blind auditions, then they ought to put them head-to-head in one-on-one battles and immediately vote people out, and they don't get to come back.
I love it.
Steve Green goes down to give blood, and other surgeons use his blood to sterilize their scalpels in, ladies and gentlemen.
True. Sad and scary, but oh so true. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks so much for watching. If you're one of the members who made this show possible, thanks so much. Not just for your labor, for your money, for your support, but for putting up with us for all these years. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.